Cleopatra's Dynasty, Intrigue, Drama, and the Fall of Egypt's Last Kingdom.
They came to rule Egypt as foreigners, but the Ptolemaic dynasty carved out a kingdom that would last for nearly 300 years. Yet behind the glory and wealth of Alexandria lay a web of intrigue, betrayal, and blood. From the rise of Ptolemy I to the dramatic fall of Cleopatra, the story of the Ptolemies is one of ambition, lust for power, and a dynasty consumed by its own greed.
Act 1. The Rise of the Ptolemies.
The Ptolemies did not begin as Egyptian kings. Ptolemy I Soter was a Macedonian general under Alexander the Great. When Alexander's empire fractured after his death, Ptolemy seized his chance. He took control of Egypt and declared himself Pharaoh in 305 BC, founding the Ptolemaic kingdom and dynasty. But Ptolemy's ascent wasn't guaranteed. His rivals sought to undermine him, and rebellion constantly loomed. Yet through cunning diplomacy, military might, and marrying into Egyptian traditions, Ptolemy solidified his rule. Egypt would become a melting pot of Greek and Egyptian cultures, and Alexandria would rise as the center of learning and power.
Act 2. Internal Strife, a family at war.
But power always brings enemies, and for the Ptolemies, the greatest threats often came from within their own bloodline. In their quest to keep the throne, they adopted the practice of sibling marriages, a strategy designed to keep power within the family. But this led to bitter rivalries, poisonings, and betrayals that would plague the dynasty for centuries. Ptolemy VIII is a perfect example of the chaos that followed. In 145 BC, he married his sister Cleopatra II, only to later marry his niece Cleopatra III in 142 BC. Civil war broke out within the family as alliances shifted, and Egypt teetered on the brink of collapse. Each generation of Ptolemies seemed to repeat the same mistakes: infighting, murder, and endless conspiracies. The dynasty was rotting from the inside, even as they held on to power with iron fists.
Act 3. The Last Pharaoh, Cleopatra's Reign of Intrigue and Drama.
And then came Cleopatra VII, the last of the Ptolemies, and one of history's most enigmatic rulers. Her reign lasted from 51 to 30 BC and was marked by ambition, cunning, and above all, her relationships with two of Rome's most powerful men, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. From her calculated entrance wrapped in a carpet to her unforgettable romance with Antony, Cleopatra's life was filled with intrigue and drama. But Cleopatra's rise was not without danger. She had to defeat her own brother, Ptolemy XIII, in a brutal civil war to secure her throne. And as Egypt's relationship with Rome grew more entangled, the stakes became higher than ever.
Act 4. The Downfall, Cleopatra and Antony versus Octavian.
Cleopatra's ambition brought her to the heights of power, but it also set her on a collision course with Rome's future emperor, Octavian, the later Augustus. Her love affair with Mark Antony was more than just romance. It was an alliance against Octavian's rising power. The Battle of Actium in 31 BC would decide the fate of the ancient world. Antony and Cleopatra fought valiantly, but Octavian's forces were too strong. As their fleets burned in the Mediterranean, Antony and Cleopatra's dream of an Eastern empire crumbled.
Act 5. The End of the Ptolemaic Dynasty.
Cleopatra's last stand was not on the battlefield, but in her own palace. Rather than face capture and degradation by Octavian, she famously took her own life, possibly by the bite of a poisonous snake. Antony had already fallen on his sword, and with Cleopatra's death, the Ptolemaic dynasty came to a tragic and dramatic end. Egypt, once the jewel of the ancient world, now became just another province of the Roman Empire. The rise and fall of the Ptolemies was complete. Nearly 3 centuries of power, intrigue, and bloodshed swept away in a single stroke.
Conclusion. The legacy of the Ptolemies.
The Ptolemies left a legacy of grandeur and tragedy. They ruled Egypt as outsiders, but became forever tied to its fate. Their story is one of power, intrigue, drama, and ultimately, the cost of ambition. Cleopatra, the last of her line, ensured that their name would never be forgotten. But in the end, the Ptolemies fell not just to Rome, but to their own internal chaos.
A dynasty that began with the dream of Alexander the Great ended in the hands of an empire that would shape the world for centuries to come, the Great Rome.
Like and subscribe now to unravel more secrets of powerful dynasties and their legacy.